Hi, I'm Evan Nathaniel Grim, and welcome to my new astrology podcast. I have a lot of different opinions about life, and throughout my life, I've steadily been more and more vocal and expressive about what I think about the world, what I believe, and in saying things that are authentic to me, and not worrying so much anymore about the outside opinions. It's how I've gotten here. It's what led me down this path, and the goal of the podcast is to not only speak unabashedly about what's happening in the world, but also to give other people that permission. So I'm really excited. It's a special moment for me. We're going to talk about the Gemini New Moon, which is happening on June 6th. And it's going to be a very, very stellar new moon full of opportunity for everybody, thanks to the follow-up to a Venus Cazimi. If you don't know what a Cazimi is, don't worry about it. We'll talk about it. And stay tuned for everything that's coming up. But before I dive into the full meaning of this Gemini New Moon, I also want to remind you to please subscribe to my Substack newsletter. That's where I have a lot of extensive coverage on all the lunation cycles and also a number of other major astrological transits. Now, in terms of what a new moon actually is, I think it's really important to understand what the new moon represents and how it actually works. So a new moon happens every 29 and a half days, and this is the ushering in of a new lunation cycle. And the new moon is in alignment with the sun and moon, and this is when the moon is in between the sun and the earth. And then about 2 weeks later, we have a full moon in which the moon is now on the opposite side of the earth, with the earth sitting in between the sun and moon. So that is the technicality of a new moon, but in the lunation cycle, symbolically speaking, a new moon is the planting of the seed, and it's when you want to set your intentions and talk about what you want to bring into existence by the time of the full moon, 2 weeks later, but also there is another time scale in which you're trying to bring something into reality about 6 months later, when we eventually will have a full moon in Gemini. And on this new moon, it's in Gemini, so we have to talk about what Gemini pertains to. So to break that down, Gemini is the third sign of the zodiac. It's a mutable air sign. And anytime you have an air sign, we're thinking about communication, relationships at different scales. So the three air signs are Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. Libra, for example, is a relationship between typically one person and another. Aquarius is a relationship between many people in a collective group or organization. Gemini is more about the relationship between ideas within the mind as you're learning. When you go to school and you're like learning your ABCs or learning, all about morphology or words or, history or really any subject, it's like you're trying to find the connecting thoughts or principles that are underlying that subject at a very basic level. And Gemini is that feeling of just kind of having this entire horizon of, just different subjects to learn about, aspire towards. And Gemini is that lifelong student that just wants to soak up so much new knowledge. So yes, in a literal sense, Gemini can be about, early education, but in terms of the just kind of the vibe of Gemini, it is insatiable in its quest for more information and more facts and more stimulation intellectually. And so Geminis really try to tackle that through, conversation, everyday conversation in the local neighborhood or outside the bar, or just by immersing yourself in a book. And so anytime we have a Gemini new moon, you want to think about sort of framing your life around some of these activities. So thinking about, okay, what kind of communication channels can I open up? What kind of conversations can I expect to start? But also with Gemini being about communication, maybe can I start my own sort of communication, can I scale up my own communication project or pursuit? Could I start writing a book? Could I start a podcast like what we're doing now? Could I start a newsletter? And so there's that curiosity to Gemini that you want to tap into on any Gemini new moon. But, I'll talk about this sort of very, very fortuitous aspects on this particular new moon. I think this is one of the strongest new moons of the year. And because this is such a fortunate new moon, you would really benefit from taking a step-by-step approach to manifesting. And I talk about that in my newsletter on my Substack. So if you go over to my Substack, I have a step-by-step guide, and it's really useful, really practical. You don't have to understand all the intricacies of astrology. I translate it for you with a really clear template. So, and it's based on your sun, moon, and rising sign. And I guide you through that, and that will help you set intentions within a sort of framework that really aligns with the energy that you have in a particular sign. And of course, you can add in your own personal, again, manifestation plan and set intentions in a very specific way. But yeah, the guidebook can really help you. Again, sort of expect to see your desires come to that fruition on the full moon. So the dominant themes of this new moon are expanding your understanding of either the world around you, like in your local environment, or understanding the inner workings of a concept, or sharing as a Gemini with where we have Mercury, Jupiter, of course, the sun and moon, and even Venus in Gemini. So we're stacked up with this Gemini energy. So everything I talked about with the themes of Gemini, which by the way, I didn't cover yet, includes siblings, neighbors, local travel, and road trips. Gemini is the amount of Gemini energy here is this is where all the opportunity lies, because we have Venus, and Jupiter, the two benefic planets, both in Gemini. And so the key themes here, in addition to expansion of understanding, greater awareness of, a certain concept or thought, it's amazing for advocating for yourself, marketing yourself, marketing your product, your service, your business, your book, giving a speech, giving a presentation, interacting with people socially, just putting yourself in the cauldron of, this, or like of, again, like human interaction, like wherever town you're in, whatever city you're in, just put yourself in these scenarios where there's this kind of pinball effect of, one opinion playing off of another. Like Gemini has a very loose energy. It's a mutable sign, so it's very adaptable. So just going to the bookstore or back in the 90s, when I used to go to like the record store, and just seeing like what records are people picking out, and oh yeah, you like the Smashing Pumpkins too, like let's have a conversation about that. Of course, in the 90s I was like 10 years old, but at best, not even. So I wasn't probably doing that, but you get the gist of it. It's like you want to find sort of, some kind of common ground with people who otherwise you may feel like, oh, usually we have such different beliefs. Like maybe you're one is a Republican, one's a Democrat, but you both enjoy this really novel or unique thing. And you can kind of bond over that. And with Gemini, it's like we're opening our mind. So Gemini is a good time to explore the duality of everything. And that is actually really the core of Gemini. So Gemini is the twins. Gemini is Castor and Pollux in the sky. And the twins have a very playful energy with Gemini, but Gemini is ruled by Mercury, and it can have this sort of archetype of being the trickster. But that is, while that can be a shadow side of Gemini, this sort of duplicitousness, Gemini is also really brilliant in that it can allow opposing forces and ideas to coexist. So a classic Gemini would be like someone who can play different roles, or they could take opposite positions, like kind of like a lawyer, and like easily argue for and against the same thing within their own mind, because that's what Gemini is relationships between ideas. So when you're learning about a new concept as a child, it's like, you're like your ABCs, or like the language, your language. It's like, you have to kind of play around with the words, right? You have to think about, the syllables and how do I rearrange this to find the word or to change it to a different word with a prefix or a suffix. So in a similar way, Geminis are able to just kind of like hop around and dance around between these different possibilities and to see the merits of each side of the equation or each face of the cube. And I don't think it's inherently at all negative. And by the way, no zodiac sign is inherently negative or positive. I think there's always a higher and lower expression. But with Gemini, it's about adopting a both and mindset rather than an either or. So something doesn't have to be, again, left or right or up or down. It can be somewhere in the middle, like on a gradient. So on this Gemini new moon, whatever you have in your birth chart, whether you're someone who's a little bit more stubborn, someone who's a little bit more go with the flow, like we all have to go with the flow right now with this Gemini new moon and really bring in a little bit more activity into our lives, a little bit more stimulation intellectually, especially after the pandemic and the lockdowns we went through, when life was moving at a very slow pace. It was just like glacial. And this is the second time that Jupiter is going to be in an air sign, since the pandemic started. The last time was in 2021 when it was in Aquarius. And that's when we had this explosion on different social media platforms like Clubhouse and TikTok. And we had this opening of, new forums where people could collaborate, people could network. And people like me were starting to learn about astrology through these platforms. And so now with this Gemini new moon, it's sort of another iteration of this. And it's bringing it to, I think, an even more exciting place of, we get this Jupiter-Pluto trine, which I think is really transforming our beliefs and our opinions. And we're also getting the Mercury-Jupiter conjunction, which can really elevate the quality of our ideas and expand them and, sort of broaden the scope of what we're seeing. So on this Gemini new moon, again, open your mind, allow other people with open minds to kind of merge with you conversationally. And in terms of initiating something, what you should set your intentions around, this new moon is 2 days after a Venus Cazimi, which is the midpoint, by the way, in Venus's synodic cycle. So Venus last formed a conjunction with the Sun in August of 2023 during the Venus retrograde. And during the Venus retrograde, we're in a very reflective state about Venus, which is our values, relationships, money, creativity. But on the superior conjunction on June 4th, 2 days before the Gemini new moon, we are very much seeing clearly what we want to achieve related to, again, financial success, creativity, love, relationships, money. And so with Gemini being about communication, really June 4th through June 6th is an amazing time to manifest that book, podcast, newsletter, to give that speech. And like I said earlier, to pitch yourself, to market yourself, to advertise, and advocate for yourself. So if you don't have even if you don't have a business, so you don't have a product to sell or anything like that, just say, okay, how can I go for that promotion, or how can I pitch, what I have to offer to this company or in this environment? So for that Gemini new moon, allow Jupiter and Gemini to be that social lubricant that is bringing some excitement into your conversations, but also just know that you have the power of persuasion on your side with this Jupiter-Mercury conjunction especially, and then following up with that Venus Cazimi, where you should have a crystal clear picture of how to attract more of what you value into your life. So Gemini is one of the most fascinating signs because it's so versatile and agile. And when I think about Geminis, oftentimes there can be a love-hate relationship to Geminis because they have that sort of dexterity and that agility that makes it frustrating for people to understand. They can't fully understand them because they can almost be shapeshifters and they can almost be um, one step ahead of others. And so some really famous Geminis that that come to mind whenever I think about this sign would be like Prince. And Prince is, I mean, love hate is probably not applicable to him. I mean, like I love his music, and he's from, Minneapolis like me. And he played so many different types of instruments, and he could play these different roles on stage and with his music. And Gemini is very much about skills. And by the way, like skills with the hands. So you'll see a lot of Geminis being drummers, dancers, musicians, guitarists. Of course, Gemini can be very data heavy and, cerebral. But a lot of Geminis are just masters of improvisation. And that's another key dynamic of Gemini. And use that, by the way, for this Gemini New Moon. Like, it's okay to improvise a little bit and to wing it. But anyway, so Prince was a master of his craft, but also, so good at contorting some ideas differently to write ever more lush and creative music. Now, in terms of setting intentions for this new moon, again, this new moon is very auspicious because of the involvement of the benefics, Venus and Jupiter, and the expansive energy of Jupiter and Mercury. So when setting intentions, just as a basic framework, you always want to set intentions in the present tense, as if it's already happened, and to phrase things in a way where you're feeling grateful for it. And I lay out all of that in a step-by-step fashion through my newsletter. So I would invite you to subscribe to the Substack newsletter if you haven't yet, and that's where I'm guiding through customized each zodiac sign how to actually specifically phrase it and what areas of life to focus on. And of course, you customize it, but it's really important to set intentions, first of all, in accordance with your rising sign, but then also to reference your sun and moon signs, which are still going to be relevant for intentions because the sun and moon also form that sort of that three-part component, the big three, that those three components that make up the sort of core and essence of who you are. And so aspects to the sun and moon will also influence how you express yourself, how you feel, and so on. So while you want to look at that newsletter for the specific guidance, when we talk about setting intentions with this Gemini new moon, set intentions around things that have to do with Gemini. So intending to start that book, to even just read those books, to learn, to teach, to start up a new conversation with someone, to take that local road trip, to collaborate, to even with Gemini being really funny, do that stand-up comedy show, or to monetize something in the communication space, to start a new marketing venture, to advertise, to pitch, to get to know your local environment better, your local neighborhood. But with the involvement of Venus and Jupiter, again, you could also set intentions around growing your the wealth or the value of your possessions, or increasing your salary, and even manifesting a new relationship with that Venus Cazimi 2 days earlier. And with Venus and Gemini, it's like you could start a relationship through happenstance or through some sort of everyday communication channel or form factor. It's like through the phone, it's the text message, a phone call, it's an email, it's a, random bumping shoulders with someone in the neighborhood, or being at the same bar as them or same restaurant. Oh, like, you like this too? Or again, being at the record store. You like that band too, or at the bookstore. You also read Stephen King, like whatever happens there. So put yourself in that cauldron, that melting pot of your local environment, and watch that pinball effect put you into a good position. So it's important to set intentions according to your rising sign, because the rising sign actually determines the configuration of your entire chart and the placement of the signs in each house. And it's important to use a whole sign house system, by the way, when looking up your chart, because there's a logic in which, let's say, for example, Scorpio is the 7th sign relative to Taurus. Therefore, if you are a Taurus rising, Scorpio would take the 7th house. So, and the rising sign not only determines the placement of the signs in the houses, but the houses are the domains of life where you have experiences. And so you want to track which house of your birth chart Gemini falls into, and then set intentions according to that house. And again, I lay that out in my newsletter. So the signs that are going to benefit the most from this new moon would be the mutable signs in this case. So Gemini, Virgo, Pisces, Sagittarius. And that's because this Gemini, first of all, there's so much Gemini energy, but Gemini is part of the mutable modality, quadruplicity. And so for those signs in particular, the Gemini New Moon is activating the angular houses of their chart. So the angular houses are really forming the sort of linchpin and foundation of the chart. And to run through that, Geminis, this is the launch point for you. This is the becoming of a new you, and also potentially the manifestation of, it's just like increased optimism for you right now. Like you're feeling better about your ability to earn more money, the ability to attract that new person into your life, the ability to launch that incredible new communication endeavor. So for Geminis, this is really the initiation of a new journey for you and kickstarting a new growth cycle. For Virgos, it's very good for manifesting an elevation of visibility in your career, or really attaining a career that is in something Gemini related. So that could be something like a career in, something communications related, or maybe you're just giving a presentation in your career that, helps you get a promotion or be seen more positively by the people that you work for. And with Jupiter being in your 10th house, maybe you are traveling in some way. For Sagittarius, this is really the birth of a better, higher quality relationship, or the improvement of the experience in an existing relationship. But also any kind of one-on-one, like consultations or advisory work, or anyone you're meeting with in a one-on-one capacity to get advice from. Even that, would just go so well in unlocking some new mode of understanding for you, and to open up for this new perspective and create that epiphany. But for a lot of Sagittariuses, like if you're watching this and you're like, I want the relationship, like that's what I'm looking for, then, absolutely I would validate that for you. Like I know that as astrologers, we talk a lot about, looking for love, here you go. Like that's like, it's become such a trite sort of gesture to be like, oh, let's just talk about love. But in this case, it's like, it is truly like a bullseye moment, for you. Like it's so clear. The path to a better relationship for you right now is so clear. And then for Pisces, this is really helping you improve the circumstances within your home and family. Buying, selling property also could go really in your favor. And, whether you like your family or not, those conditions are improving ideally with your family. Yeah. You're feeling maybe like you're patching some things up, maybe you're traveling with them, and so on. And for these signs, I just want to quickly mention, Saturn is squaring the new moon and Venus. So there is a bit of a sacrifice, a bit of a, there's a demand to commit to one of these things. So the opportunities that come up, it's like they come with a caveat, which is that you have to want that. You have to want that for a while. You have to want that for maybe the whole time that Saturn ends up retrograding, all the way through November 15th of this year. So, and I think that's, part of the value of, this podcast is like, I don't want to, just give you the sort of glossy version of it. It's like there are so many opportunities on this new moon, but it's really important to remember that Saturn is squaring this new moon. So Saturn is the planet of really opportunity cost. What are you giving up to get this other thing? Like there's not necessarily always a limitless, abundance to everything in life. So on this new moon, set those intentions to strive for increased success and prosperity. Absolutely. But remember, Saturn is going to scrutinize and judge the hell out of what you do. So I think that with Saturn square Venus, it's like, maybe if you want to monetize X, then you have to give up Y. Or if you want to manifest that in your relationship, then it comes at the cost of this other one. Or if you want to be really stepping into this creative role or this creative project, you may have to give up a different thing. So for Saturn, it's very much, how are you dedicating time and allocating time to things? And Saturn is a reminder that we have limited time. But from that perspective, it's like all the more reason to not waste time, to do what is actually authentic to you, because that authentic endeavor, that authentic pursuit is going to have longevity, because there's nothing holding you back. You are refueling yourself every day when you wake up and you're like, I love what I'm doing. And it's exciting. And with the Gemini New Moon, ideally, it's something that is helping you further the scope of your understanding of what the world is all about. So the way to know whether or not you're making the right sacrifice or if you're on the right path is to understand the nature of Saturn being in Pisces. Saturn being in Pisces is so much about where our idealism meets up with reality. And in Pisces, there is a give and take there between wanting to find something purpose-driven, something aspirational, something even divine with Pisces that nevertheless has some kind of foundation underneath it, undergirding it, because Saturn needs things to be stress-tested, time-tested, durable. But in Pisces, it's like not like a Saturn Capricorn where it's like, we can just do the boring shit, we can just build, we can just go work at a bank and take the same paycheck every month. Saturn and Capricorn is a little bit more about that stability within a hierarchy. Saturn in Pisces is saying, like, it's kind of like this James Cameron effect where it's like, I want to like just make the next Titanic, or I want to make the next Avatar. And we had Dune obviously come out just recently during the Saturn Sun Mercury conjunction. But Saturn in Pisces is saying, yeah, can I scale up something extremely creative, maybe spiritual, something that is helping me really tap into a sense of like unity consciousness within the divine, to connect with the divine. But something that's incorporated into my career, which is what Saturn is. Saturn is like about what you're doing with your professional life. So your professional life cannot be divorced from your spiritual quest or your spiritual mission. Your career has to parallel that spiritual development. And so to make those sacrifices, you have to sacrifice something in favor of that authentic ideal. And that way, I think, Saturn being the Lord of Karma, it's like, okay, you exchange something that was, really, really just utilizing a baseline understanding of who you are, and you're trading that for something where it's like, that you're becoming the best version of yourself. Saturn in Pisces, though, is also about the consequences of the darker side of Pisces. So if you are succumbing to escapist tendencies, or, you're just senselessly thinking in an illusory way that like your script is just going to get purchased by, Universal like next week. Or if you think that, just drinking all day or something is just going to, and escaping into that movie is going to eventually inspire you to write your own script. It's like time is just slipping through your fingers. So, with Saturn and Pisces, like aim high and tap into that abstract and attune yourself to the universal ether to get that inspiration, but act on that inspiration now. And that's a good, that's something that I've experienced in my own life, because I spent, most of my 20s when I was in New York drinking all the time and going out and socializing. And I thought that was good for me, but I was just losing track of time. I was wasting a lot of time. And I've been sober now for 2.5 years, and that coincided with my journey into spirituality, astrology, and even, starting to find success. Like literally the last day. So I quit drinking September of 2021 on September 7th. And very shortly thereafter is when I went viral on TikTok for the first time. So that to me was a sign and a validation that it's like, by sobering up, I'm trading spirits for spirituality and getting kind of clear-headed, like finding that clear-headedness, that, awakening that third eye and not having as many obstructions towards, it's like I could see further, I could see wider, I could see deeper, more extensively into things. And it's because I wasn't swimming in this escapist sea of my illusions, but I also wasn't taping over or avoiding sort of my biggest fears, my biggest worries and anxieties about life, which I was doing before. So then I started doing breath work. And to me, that is kind of a Saturn and Pisces experience, is like applying discipline to the things applying discipline in a way to elevate consciousness rather than, avoiding that entire, instead of just like keeping a mask on. And regardless of your sign, you would experience the most challenge and the most resistance if you were to succumb to your vices or engage with them. So, and in classic Gemini fashion, like none of us is inherently totally virtuous or vicious, right? We have to allow these things to coexist. And I think there's an element of Pisces that has to do with forgiveness. So with Saturn being in Pisces, Neptune being in Pisces, there are all these illusions being busted, all these myths that we tell ourselves, these false narratives that are just breaking, and we're not able to tell ourselves these lies anymore. But, at least by accepting, that we have been escaping, that we have been leading ourselves astray, accepting that, forgiving ourselves for that, then we can let that phase go. We can let that era go. And we can really begin to, strive for greatness in a way that is improving our own lives, but with Pisces really helping to improve the human experience for those around us. So to really put this new moon in a bigger perspective, it's about balancing the opportunities that are coming in with the responsibilities that comes with. And in some cases, reconciling the new opportunity with existing responsibilities. But as you take responsibility for something, whether it's a new opportunity or the extension of an existing one, with Saturn being in effect here, this is about a daily commitment. And if you were to avoid, making any of these sacrifices, then the full moon 2 weeks later, June 21st, is a Capricorn full moon, about a week before Saturn stations retrograde. So the awakening is just going to get ruder and ruder if you just hold off on what you need to change. So with that Capricorn full moon, it is a reckoning. It's a reality check. And yeah, it's a reality check on how you've chosen to engage with the Pisces area of your chart. So if on the Gemini New Moon, you sort of set the scaffolding in your head for like this big, again, project of like, I'm going to sell this script or I'm going to write this song and it's going to get picked up by a major label. But like the scaffolding on the full moon in Capricorn is be like, is that really, is the architecture, is the design of that scaffolding like really holding up, or is this whole thing going to collapse? So on the Gemini New Moon, don't allow the shadow side of Gemini to get to you. Don't allow the trickster side of Gemini to have you thinking so big about something without a plan. So with Gemini, with Jupiter, Mercury conjunct, it's like, yeah, you can have an aspirational thought. But with Saturn, it has to have legs. It has to have a process. It has to have an implementation to it. So, as I talk about in my newsletter, you want to really come up with a sort of organizing principle and some type of schema towards reaching and achieving your goals. And then we even have the Gemini full moon December 15th. And by that point, Mars is retrograde opposite Pluto. So, for some people, it's like by that full moon, there's a lot of power. Even though Mars retrograde, Mars opposite Pluto, there's a lot of power in what you can attain by that point through this disciplined approach. And by then, Saturn's direct again. But conversely, if you are really getting lost in this oceanic Pisces energy that is extremely diffuse and very nebulous, then it's like by the Gemini full moon at the end of the year, that Mars-Pluto opposition is just going to make you feel resentful, bitter, frustrated. Why did I get stuck in this situation? It's because, again, on the Gemini New Moon and then in the Capricorn full moon 2 weeks later, it's like, you didn't actually find a way to create sustainable progress in your life. But again, I can't stress this enough. So long as you manage that Saturn placement and don't feed your vices, you can absolutely benefit from this new moon more than the vast majority of new moons this year, if not all of them, because it's actually something that can carry you for many years. Saturn operates oftentimes in like 7-year sort of quarter cycles. And so, or even, a full Saturn cycle. But really think about this as laying the foundation for some type of Geminian activity that can become part of your maybe professional life, or it's a relationship that can actually sustain itself. And connecting back to Pisces, where anything you're doing there, whether it's creative or romantic or professional, it is helping you, really find success through your spiritual quest for enlightenment. And I just wanted to say I'm really excited to be engaging with you all in this format. It is really where I feel like I can have a really candid, organic discussion about everything that's happening. And I would welcome your feedback. This is our first episode to talk about a new moon and get into the tactical, strategic approach that you can take to the everyday transits. And also one of the best areas where you can engage with me is through my Substack newsletter, because that's where you can drop comments, ask me questions, respond to the manifestation guide. I'm really curious what you think about the guide for this new moon. Is it, helping you sort of and prompting you towards something that you feel really solid about? So I'm really looking forward to hearing your feedback. And also, please remember to subscribe, follow, and leave a review for this podcast. And I'm really looking forward to seeing you on the next episode.